Hello everyone, this is Mr. Lipchick, and today our discussion is going to be on the topic of immigration. An immigrant is defined as a person who moves to a new country with the intention of staying there permanently. And many of us can trace our ancestry back to recent immigration. To the right is a picture of my grandmother, a little girl, and her great-grandparents in 1893. The history of the United States is a history of immigration from other parts of the world. The laws regarding immigration have changed throughout the history of the U.S. So we're going to talk a little bit about how immigration policy has changed. Okay, immigrants versus aliens. An alien is a person who lives in a country where he or she is not a citizen. It is not somebody from another planet. Okay, I'm not really sure I like the term alien, but this term is used to describe a non-citizen. Okay, an alien may or may not intend to become a citizen. They may be here for various reasons. A resident alien is a person from a foreign nation who has established permanent residence in the United States. And frequently they're issued what you see to the right, and that is the green card. That is something that immigrants who want to come here are highly seek after. And a resident alien may stay in the U.S. as long as they want, without becoming citizens of the United States. Okay, aliens are classified into different groups. A non-resident alien is a person from a foreign country who expects to stay in the U.S. for a short, specific period of time. An enemy alien is a citizen of a nation with which the U.S. is at war. This happened to a lot of German immigrants, as you can see to the right, around the time of World War I. That's a tough terminology because a lot of people came here, did not bother to become citizens, or they came here to visit or what have you. Then war breaks out and they cannot get back to their homeland, so they are classified as enemy aliens for security reasons. And they still have constitutional protections as enemy aliens. There are also refugees. A refugee is a person fleeing another country to escape persecution or danger. To the right, you see a picture of the Vietnamese boat people coming after the war. We supported the government of the South, which was non-communist, and many of the government workers and supporters had to flee when the communists came into Saigon and took over. An illegal alien is a person who enters the U.S. illegally without any documentation. There are 2 to 3 million living in the U.S., and it is a bit of a problem and a source of debate in this country. I can attest that if you go to the South, to a state like Texas, and you removed all of the illegal aliens working there, the economy of Texas would collapse because they're a part of the economy now. Okay, and they contribute to this country. So there's a lot of debate. A lot of people feel they should be given amnesty and be allowed to become citizens. Okay, the rights of aliens. The protections of the Bill of Rights apply to aliens as well as citizens. The Supreme Court has consistently maintained these rights against any state laws trying to limit them. They may work, own property, and carry on a business. And they are entitled to use public agencies such as schools. They must pay U.S. state and local taxes and be loyal to the country. They cannot engage in activities that harm the country. They may not vote, but do not have to serve in the armed forces. They are not guaranteed the right to travel freely in the United States, however. They must notify U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services when traveling or changing residence. And this is because they're not citizens at this moment in time, and sometimes their loyalty can be questionable, and the government wants to keep track of them. Okay, immigration policy. Immigration restrictions began to grow during the period of 1882 to 1924. Prior to that, people came in quite large numbers to the United States. To the right, you will see pictures of Chinese laborers who came to work on the Transcontinental Railroad, and many of their ancestors today live in the United States, especially in areas like San Francisco. In 1882, Congress passed a law barring immigration of the handicapped, convicts, and paupers, that is, the poor. Congress also passed the Chinese Exclusion Act, preventing foreign-born Chinese people from becoming citizens. And this was really not a nice thing to do. These were very hardworking people who contributed to the growth of this country substantially. And it was basically irrational fears and of their culture and of the Chinese people. A lot of ignorance. The education level wasn't very high back then. People had a lot of prejudices that were not based in fact about the Chinese. During this time, immigrants from Eastern and Southern Europe came to the U.S. in large numbers. Greeks, Italians, Slavic people, Polish people. My own ancestors came to this country about 1907. Many native-born citizens were from Northern and Western European descent. These were German, English, and Irish, and they were prejudiced against these peoples from Southern and Eastern Europe. And immigrants, however, found refuge within their ethnic churches and neighborhoods and associations. If you go throughout Western Pennsylvania, you'll see many Russian Orthodox churches. You'll see in practically every town in Western Pennsylvania and Eastern Ohio has a Sons of Italy, has a Polish Falcons. So they formed fraternal organizations and looked out for one another. People were afraid these new immigrants would take jobs for less pay. In reaction to people's fears and prejudices, the national origins quotas were passed between 1924 and 1965. The Immigration Act of 1924 decreased the number of immigrants permitted to enter the U.S. by 80%. Large quotas were given to people from Northern and Western Europe than for people from Eastern and Southern Europe. So there was a great deal of prejudice against people from Eastern and Southern Europe, and the numbers permitted into the country began to decline. Few people from Northern and Western Europe desired to emigrate to the U.S., however. They had a higher standard of living, moderate level of success, and because of this, the amount of immigrants dropped sharply. The Immigration Reform Act of 1965 was eventually passed, and this act abolished the system of national origins quotas. This law would allow many people who were unable to enter the country to immigrate in order to be with their families. In other words, husbands and wives could be reunited, people could be united with their children. This law created two categories of immigrants: those from countries of the Eastern Hemisphere, that is Europe, Asia, and Africa, and those from the Western Hemisphere, that is North, Central, and South America. Preference categories were established in this order. 1. Persons whose skills would be especially advantageous to the United States. And 2. unmarried adult children of U.S. citizens. 3. Husbands and wives and unmarried children of permanent residents of the United States. And 4. Professionals such as doctors, lawyers, and scientists. Also, refugees from communist countries, the Middle East, or disaster victims. The Immigration Reform and Control Act of 1986 was eventually passed, and the law was passed in response to growing illegal immigration coming from south of the border primarily. That is not to say there is not illegal immigration from other places. You have Irish people coming through Boston. You have people from Asian countries coming through Western Canada. So you have to, keep it in perspective. But it is primarily from south of the border with Mexico. This created punishments for employers who hire illegal immigrants. Employers would be fined $250 to $2,000 for each illegal alien hired, and subsequent offenses would be subject to greater fines and imprisonment. And it required employers to ask for documents such as passports and birth certificates to verify that they are allowed to work in the U.S. One of the problems with this is it is relatively easy to get a forged birth certificate or other paperwork. It established amnesty and a path to citizenship for aliens who entered the country before 1982. First, they would become lawful residents and then permanent residents within 18 months. And after 5 years of permanent residency, they could apply for citizenship. The Immigration Act of 1990 continued to amend our immigration policy. By 1990, 85% of immigrants were coming from Asia and Latin America. The Immigration Act of 1990 was passed to take into account countries of origin and admit the most highly skilled and educated immigrants. Immigrants from any single country could make up no more than 7% of annual visas. The Immigration Act of 1990 established a transition diversity program to open immigration to those adversely affected by the 1965 law, and encouraged the immigration of workers with extraordinary abilities who would be guaranteed a job when they came to the U.S., and it created categories of special immigrants, war refugees, close relatives of U.S. citizens, and those admitted through private laws, that is, Congress passing a law applying to one person, enabling them to enter the U.S. To the right, you see a picture of Yao Ming. He would be a perfect candidate for a program like this because of his skill at basketball and the desire of teams to recruit him. Okay, that concludes our lesson. Thank you for your participation, and I look forward to seeing you in the live lesson room. Have a great day. Bye-bye.